Ambassador Sarah Chen had always believed that diplomacy could solve any problem. Even as the massive hegemony warship filled her viewport, its dark hull bristling with weapon arrays that could vaporize her small diplomatic vessel in seconds, she maintained that belief. The humans had spent 3 years trying to establish formal contact with the galactic hegemony, and this meeting was supposed to be the breakthrough moment. "Unknown vessel, you will surrender immediately or be destroyed," came the transmission in heavily accented galactic standard. The translation matrix struggled with the harsh, guttural tones of what Sarah recognized as Vorthak's speech patterns. "This is Ambassador Sarah Chen of the Human Federation," she replied calmly, her hands steady on the communications console despite her racing heart. "I carry diplomatic credentials and seek an audience with the Hegemony Council as previously arranged." The response was a tractor beam that seized her ship with crushing force. Warning lights flashed across her control panels as the beam dragged her vessel toward the massive dreadnought's hangar bay. Sarah quickly activated her ship's emergency beacon, a quantum entanglement transmitter that would instantly alert Earth to her situation. It was standard procedure for any diplomatic mission into unknown space. The hangar bay doors opened like the maw of some ancient predator, and Sarah's ship was pulled inside. Through the viewport, she could see hundreds of hegemony troops waiting for her, their powered armor gleaming under the harsh artificial lights. They looked like mechanical insects, all angular plates and glowing red sensors where eyes should be. As her ship settled onto the deck with a metallic clang, Sarah took a deep breath and straightened her formal diplomatic uniform. She had volunteered for this mission knowing the risks. Humanity needed allies in the galaxy, and the hegemony controlled 12 star systems with vast resources and advanced technology. If they could be convinced to trade rather than treat humans as primitive newcomers, it would secure Earth's future among the stars. The airlock hissed open, and Sarah stepped out with her hands raised in the universal gesture of peace. The assembled troops immediately raised their weapons, energy rifles that hummed with barely contained power. Their leader, distinguished by additional rank insignia and a more elaborate helmet design, stepped forward. "I am Sub-Commander Thexval of the Hegemony 4th Fleet," the alien announced, his voice mechanically distorted by his armor's speakers. "By order of Supreme Admiral Corvash, you are under arrest for violation of hegemony space." Sarah blinked in surprise. "I don't understand. We sent diplomatic protocols 3 months ago requesting this meeting. Your government agreed to receive me here at these coordinates." The sub-commander's helmet tilted slightly, a gesture Sarah couldn't interpret. "The hegemony does not negotiate with inferior species. Your presence here is an insult to our sovereignty. You will be interrogated and executed as an example to your kind." "Wait," Sarah said, her diplomatic training kicking in despite the death threat. "There's clearly been a misunderstanding. I have documentation of our correspondence with your diplomatic corps. Please, just let me show you." The butt of an energy rifle struck her in the stomach, doubling her over. As she gasped for breath, armored hands seized her arms and began dragging her from the hangar. Her formal protests and diplomatic immunity claims echoed off the metal walls, but the hegemony troops showed no interest in her words. They hauled her through corridors that stretched for what felt like kilometers, past massive gun emplacements and troop barracks filled with thousands more soldiers. The scale of the ship was staggering. It was less a warship than a mobile military base, designed to project power across entire star systems. Sarah was thrown into a holding cell barely large enough for her to stand upright. The walls were smooth metal with no obvious seams or weaknesses, and the only light came from strips of harsh white illumination embedded in the ceiling. A small waste facility and water dispenser completed the Spartan accommodations. Hours passed, or perhaps days. Without any natural light cycle, Sarah lost track of time. Guards brought her small portions of what she assumed was standard prison food, a gray paste that tasted like cardboard but provided basic nutrition. She tried repeatedly to communicate with her captors, explaining her diplomatic status and requesting contact with her government, but they ignored her completely. Finally, the cell door slid open, and Sub-Commander Thexval entered, flanked by 2 guards. His helmet had been removed, revealing a face that was distinctly reptilian, with golden scales and large, intelligent eyes. Despite the alien features, Sarah could read the contempt in his expression. "Your pathetic transmissions have been monitored," he said without preamble. "Your government has sent 17 messages demanding your release. They threaten dire consequences if you are harmed." Sarah felt a flutter of hope. "Then you understand this was a mistake. Release me, and we can begin proper negotiations." "Your government," Thexval continued as if she hadn't spoken, "has been classified as a minor threat at best. Your species controls exactly 1 star system, possesses no significant military force, and has existed in space for less than a century. The hegemony has ruled the galaxy for over 3,000 years. He leaned closer, his golden eyes reflecting the cell's harsh light. "Your execution will be broadcast across hegemony space as a lesson to any other minor species that might presume to demand audience with their betters. Your death will serve as an educational tool." Sarah's diplomatic composure finally cracked. "You're making a mistake," she said, her voice rising. "Humanity doesn't make threats lightly. If you harm me, your species will do what?" Thexval's laugh was a harsh, barking sound. "Send your single colony ship masquerading as a warship? Attack with your primitive kinetic weapons? The hegemony 4th Fleet alone could reduce your homeworld to molten slag in minutes." He turned to leave, then paused at the cell door. "Your execution is scheduled for tomorrow, at the conclusion of the 3rd shift. You may use the remaining time to reflect on your species' arrogance in believing you could treat with the hegemony as equals." The door slid shut with a decisive clang, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts and growing fear. She had always known diplomacy carried risks, but she had never imagined such casual dismissal of basic interstellar law. The hegemony clearly viewed humanity as so insignificant that they could murder a diplomatic envoy without consequences. She activated the small personal communicator hidden in her uniform's collar, a device designed to look like a decorative pin. The quantum entanglement transmitter built into it would carry her voice instantly across the vast distance to Earth, regardless of any jamming the hegemony might attempt. "This is Ambassador Sarah Chen, transmitting final diplomatic report," she whispered, keeping her voice low in case guards were monitoring. "The hegemony has refused all negotiations and intends to execute me as a public example. They view humanity as a minor, insignificant species, unworthy of basic diplomatic recognition." She paused, thinking of her family back on Earth, of the colleagues who had believed in the possibility of peaceful contact with the galaxy's dominant power. "They're wrong about us," she continued, her voice growing stronger. "They think we're weak because we're young. They don't understand what they're dealing with, what we're capable of when pushed." The communicator's tiny light blinked once and went dark, indicating the message had been transmitted. Sarah sat back against the cell wall and closed her eyes, thinking about humanity's brief but violent history. Every species they had encountered so far had made the same mistake as the hegemony, underestimating what humans would do to protect their own. The irony wasn't lost on her that she, a diplomat dedicated to peace, might become the catalyst for the very war she had hoped to prevent. But if her death could teach the galaxy something about humanity's true nature, perhaps it wouldn't be entirely in vain. Meanwhile, trillions of kilometers away on Earth, the emergency quantum transmission was being received in the heavily shielded communications center beneath the Human Federation's military headquarters. Fleet Admiral Marcus Torres read Ambassador Chen's final message 3 times before setting down the datapad with hands that trembled slightly from suppressed rage. He had served in humanity's brief but brutal colonial wars, had seen what humans could accomplish when their survival was threatened. The hegemony was about to learn a lesson that every aggressor species in human history had eventually understood. There was nothing more dangerous than a human who believed their family was in danger. Admiral Torres activated his personal communications array and began issuing orders that would mobilize humanity's entire military force. The hegemony wanted to make an example of Ambassador Chen? Very well. Humanity would be happy to provide a different kind of education entirely. In the depths of space, construction yards that had been building colony ships and research vessels received new orders. Manufacturing plants that produced mining equipment began retooling for very different purposes. And in a dozen hidden facilities scattered across Earth's solar system, weapons that had been theoretical concepts just days before began moving from drawing board to reality with terrifying speed. The hegemony had made a fundamental error in their assessment of humanity. They had confused youth with weakness, peaceful intentions with inability to wage war. They were about to discover why every species in Earth's history that had threatened human civilization had eventually ceased to exist. Ambassador Sarah Chen spent her final night in captivity composing letters she would never be able to send, unaware that her sacrifice was about to unleash the full fury of a species that had climbed to the top of their planet's food chain through superior intelligence, ruthless creativity, and an absolute refusal to accept defeat. The hegemony had captured a diplomat. They were about to face an entire civilization that had never learned how to surrender. Supreme Admiral Corvash considered himself a reasonable being. In his 300 years of service to the galactic hegemony, he had conquered 47 star systems, subjugated 32 different species, and overseen the execution of thousands of rebels and dissidents. He ruled the Fourth Fleet with absolute authority, commanding over 600 warships and 3 million soldiers. The execution of one primitive diplomat from an insignificant species should have been a minor administrative task, hardly worthy of his personal attention. Yet something about the human's final words kept nagging at him as he reviewed the execution broadcast preparations. "They don't understand what they're dealing with," the human female had said in her intercepted transmission to her homeworld. Such defiance from a member of a species that couldn't even manage faster-than-light travel without purchasing alien technology was either admirable stupidity or something more concerning. "Admiral," Sub-Commander Thexval's voice interrupted his thoughts through the command center's communication system. "The prisoner is prepared for execution. The broadcast equipment is ready to transmit across all hegemony frequencies." "Proceed," Corvash replied, settling back in his command throne to watch the spectacle. The main viewing screen activated, showing the execution chamber where Ambassador Chen stood with her hands bound, surrounded by a full ceremonial guard unit. She had maintained her dignity throughout her imprisonment, refusing to beg or grovel as most prisoners did before their deaths. The execution was broadcast live across the hegemony's communication networks, reaching billions of citizens on hundreds of worlds. It was meant to demonstrate the futility of challenging hegemony authority, a clear message that even claiming equality with the ruling powers would result in death. Ambassador Chen spoke briefly before her execution, her words calm and clear despite the circumstances. "My name is Sarah Chen, representative of humanity. We came in peace, seeking friendship and cooperation. Instead, we found arrogance and cruelty. History will judge which of our species chose the wiser path." The energy discharge that ended her life was quick and clean, befitting the hegemony's efficient methods. Corvash watched impassively as the human's body crumpled to the metal floor, then gestured for the broadcast to be terminated. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving multiple transmissions from the human homeworld. 17 separate messages demanding the ambassador's release, with increasingly hostile language." "Ignore them," Corvash ordered. "Post a navigation warning declaring their system off-limits to all vessels. If they attempt to leave their space, destroy them. The communications officer nodded and returned to his duties. Corvash dismissed the human concerns from his mind and focused on more important matters. The Fourth Fleet was scheduled to begin occupation of the Deltari system next month, a much more significant operation than dealing with primitive upstarts. For 6 days, everything proceeded normally. The human transmissions continued but grew less frequent and more resigned in tone. Corvash assumed the primitive species was finally accepting its place in the galactic order. Then, on the 7th day, everything changed. "Admiral!" The sensor operator's voice cracked with stress. "Massive energy signature detected at the edge of our patrol zone. Something just dropped out of hyperspace." Corvash straightened in his throne. "Identity and class of vessel? Unknown configuration, sir. It's massive. Mass readings indicate approximately 15 million tons. No energy weapons detected, but the hull composition is unlike anything in our databases." On the main screen, a ship appeared that defied Corvash's understanding of starship design. It was a massive, angular construct that looked more like a mobile fortress than a spacecraft. The hull was matte black and covered with what appeared to be sensor arrays and communication equipment rather than obvious weapons. "Sir," the communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the unknown vessel." "Put it through." The screen filled with the image of a human male wearing a dark military uniform covered in rank insignia. His expression was calm, but his eyes held something that made Corvash unconsciously grip his throne's armrests. "I am Fleet Admiral Marcus Torres of the Human Federation Military," the human said in perfect galactic standard. "6 days ago, you murdered Ambassador Sarah Chen, a diplomatic envoy operating under the protection of interstellar law. I am here to discuss the consequences of that action." Corvash leaned forward, his scaled features arranged in what he intended as an intimidating expression. "I am Supreme Admiral Corvash, commander of the Hegemony Fourth Fleet. You will withdraw from this system immediately or be destroyed. Your primitive vessel poses no threat to my forces." The human admiral's expression didn't change. "Admiral Corvash, you will surrender yourself and your command staff for trial. Your fleet will disarm and return to hegemony space. You have 1 hour to comply." The audacity of the demand left Corvash momentarily speechless. When he recovered, his laugh echoed through the command center. "Human, I command 600 warships. Your single vessel, regardless of size, cannot threaten my fleet." "Admiral," his tactical officer interrupted, "I'm detecting anomalous readings throughout the system. There appear to be objects positioned at regular intervals around our formation." "Objects?" "Unknown composition, sir. They weren't there before the human ship arrived, but they're not showing on conventional sensors. Only our most sensitive detection equipment can locate them." Admiral Torres continued speaking as if he hadn't been interrupted. "For the past 3 years, Admiral Corvash, you have been observed. Every ship movement, every tactical formation, every weakness in your fleet's defensive posture has been cataloged and analyzed. We know the exact location of every vessel under your command." Corvash felt the first stirring of unease. "Impossible. Our sensors would have detected any surveillance." "Your sensors detect what they were designed to detect," Torres replied. "But humans think differently than most species. We don't announce our presence when conducting reconnaissance. We hide, we watch, we learn, and then, when the time is right, we act." The tactical display around Corvash's throne began updating with new contacts. Dozens, then hundreds of previously undetected objects were appearing throughout the system, positioned with mathematical precision around every major ship and installation in the Fourth Fleet. "Sir," the tactical officer's voice was rising in pitch, "those objects, they're weapons platforms. Incredibly advanced stealth technology, but now that we know where to look, we can see them clearly. Each one is targeting multiple vessels in our fleet. Torres continued his calm narration. Each platform carries kinetic penetrators traveling at 12% the speed of light. At that velocity, your armor might as well be paper. Your shields are designed to stop energy weapons, not relativistic projectiles. This is impossible, Corvash snarled. Your species has only been in space for decades. You lack the technology for such weapons. We lack alien technology, Torres corrected. But humans have always been innovative when it comes to finding new ways to kill their enemies. These platforms have been in position for 3 days, invisible and waiting. Each one can destroy a dozen of your ships before your return fire even reaches them. The command center had gone silent, except for the steady beeping of sensors detecting more and more hidden weapons. Corvash's confidence was evaporating as he realized the scope of what the humans had accomplished. They had somehow positioned hundreds of weapon platforms throughout his fleet's formation without being detected. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice carefully controlled. "Justice for Ambassador Chen. You will surrender yourself and stand trial for the murder of a diplomatic envoy. Your fleet will withdraw from this region of space and never return, and you will deliver a message to your Hegemony Council." "What message?" Torres leaned closer to the camera, and for the first time, Corvash could see the predatory nature behind the human's calm exterior. "Tell them that humanity is not interested in conquest. We don't want your empire or your territory. But we will not tolerate aggression against our people. Any species that harms humans will face the full consequences of that action. You threaten the entire hegemony with one ship?" "One ship you can see," Torres corrected. "Admiral, do you know what humans call a military formation like yours? 600 ships clustered together in predictable patterns, following standard tactical doctrine. We call it a target-rich environment." The tactical officer's voice was barely a whisper. "Sir, I'm detecting power buildup in the weapons platforms. They're preparing to fire." Corvash's mind raced through his options. His fleet was trapped. Surrounded by weapons they couldn't fight and couldn't escape. The humans had somehow achieved the impossible, complete tactical superiority without a single shot being fired. "How?" he asked, genuinely curious despite his dire situation. "Humans are persistence hunters, Admiral. On our homeworld, we evolved to track prey across vast distances, to study their behavior, to wait for the perfect moment to strike. We brought those same instincts to space warfare. While you were conducting obvious patrols with massive fleets, we were watching with devices smaller than your sensors could detect." Torres gestured, and the main screen split to show multiple angles of the Fourth Fleet's formation. Every image was taken from a different hidden surveillance platform, some positioned so close to hegemony ships that they could have reached out and touched the hull plating. "For 3 years, we studied you. We learned your patterns, your weaknesses, your standard operating procedures, and when you murdered our ambassador, we were ready." The irony wasn't lost on Corvash. The hegemony had dismissed humanity as primitive because they used kinetic weapons instead of energy systems, because their ships looked crude compared to elegant alien designs. But those same primitive weapons were about to destroy his entire fleet. "If I surrender," he asked, "what happens to my people?" "Your fleet returns to hegemony space unharmed. Your crews live to see their families again. Only those responsible for Ambassador Chen's murder will face trial." Corvash looked around his command center at the officers who had served him faithfully for decades. Young Thexval, who had carried out the execution order without question. Communications Officer Veltar, who had ignored the human diplomatic messages. Tactical Officer Zoreth, who had dismissed human capabilities as insignificant. They were all staring at him, waiting for orders that might save their lives or doom their entire fleet. 600 ships, 3 million souls, all depending on his next words. "Stand down all weapons," he ordered quietly. "Signal fleet-wide stand down. Prepare shuttles for prisoner transfer." Torres nodded approvingly. A wise decision, Admiral. Your crew will be allowed to return home. You and your command staff will be treated according to the standards of civilized warfare, something Ambassador Chen was denied. As Corvash prepared for surrender, he wondered if the Hegemony Council would learn from this disaster or simply send a larger fleet to deal with the human problem. He hoped they would choose wisdom over pride. Something told him that if they underestimated humanity again, the consequences would be far worse than the loss of a single fleet. The humans had proven they could strike anywhere, anytime, without warning. They had turned invisibility and patience into devastating weapons, and judging by Admiral Torres's demeanor, they were just getting started. The Hegemony Council chamber on the capital world of Vorthak Prime had not seen such chaos in over a century. The vast circular hall, designed to showcase the power and dignity of the galaxy's ruling species, echoed with angry voices and heated arguments as representatives from 12 different worlds tried to comprehend the disaster that had befallen the Fourth Fleet. Supreme Chancellor Grix Moth, eldest of the Hegemony leadership and ruler of the Council for 40 years, called for silence with the ceremonial staff of office. The ancient weapon, carved from the bone of the first alien species the Hegemony had conquered, struck the marble floor 3 times before the assembly grudgingly quieted. "We are here," Grix Moth announced in his deep, gravelly voice, "to address the unprecedented defeat of Admiral Corvash's Fourth Fleet by an unknown human military force. The Admiral and his command staff await trial on the human homeworld, while his entire fleet has withdrawn from the contested sector in what can only be described as a complete surrender." Angry murmurs rippled through the chamber. The Hegemony had not suffered a military defeat since the early days of their galactic expansion, and the idea that a primitive species could force the surrender of 600 warships was almost impossible to accept. Fleet Admiral Zektar, commanding officer of the First Fleet and the most senior military leader in the Hegemony, rose from his designated seat. "Supreme Chancellor, with respect, we cannot allow this insult to stand. The humans have violated every principle of galactic order by attacking a superior military force. They must be crushed immediately." "And how?" Chancellor Grix Moth asked calmly. "Do you propose to crush an enemy that can position hundreds of weapons platforms around our ships without being detected? An enemy that has demonstrated technological capabilities we didn't know existed?" "Impossible," Admiral Zektar declared. "Our intelligence reports indicate the humans have only recently achieved interstellar flight. They lack the industrial capacity to produce advanced stealth systems. This must be some kind of deception or alien assistance." "Your intelligence reports," came a new voice from the chamber's entrance, "were catastrophically wrong." Every head in the assembly turned toward the speaker. Admiral Torres, still wearing his dark military uniform, walked calmly down the central aisle accompanied by a small honor guard of human soldiers. Their presence in the Hegemony's most secure facility sent shocked whispers through the gathered representatives. "How did you get here?" Chancellor Grix Moth demanded, rising from his throne. "This facility is protected by multiple defense grids and shield generators. No ship could approach undetected." Torres stopped at the center of the chamber and looked around at the assembled alien leadership with the same calm expression he had worn during the fleet engagement. "Chancellor, I've been on this planet for 2 days. My ship arrived through your defensive perimeter without triggering a single alarm. Your security is impressive against conventional attacks, but humans don't use conventional approaches." The implications of his words struck the Council like a physical blow. If humans could penetrate the Hegemony capital's defenses so easily, then nowhere in their territory was truly secure. "What do you want?" Grix Moth asked, his voice carefully controlled. "I'm here to prevent a war," Torres replied simply. "Your Admiral Zektar is already planning a retaliatory strike against Earth. He believes that overwhelming force will succeed where the Fourth Fleet failed. I'm here to explain why that would be the last mistake your species ever makes. Admiral Zektar stepped forward aggressively. Human, you may have defeated one fleet through trickery, but the hegemony can field 3,000 warships. Your single star system cannot stand against such force. Torres smiled, and something about that expression made several council members instinctively step backward. Admiral, you're still thinking in terms of conventional warfare, ships and fleets and territory. That's not how humans fight when our survival is threatened. He gestured, and one of his soldiers activated a portable holographic projector. The chamber filled with tactical displays showing hegemony military installations across a dozen star systems. Each display was marked with detailed intelligence assessments, defensive positions, and what appeared to be targeting solutions. For the past 3 years, Torres continued, while you dismissed us as primitive, we've been mapping your entire military infrastructure. Every shipyard, every weapon depot, every command center. We know the location of your deepest bunkers and your most secret facilities. The displays shifted, showing manufacturing centers, communication hubs, and civilian infrastructure. The level of detail was staggering. Internal facility layouts, security protocols, even personnel schedules for key installations. We've also been studying your society, Torres said as the images continued cycling. Your agricultural worlds that feed billions, your mining colonies that supply raw materials, your transportation networks that hold your empire together, everything you need to maintain your civilization. Chancellor Grixmoth's voice was barely a whisper. How is this possible? Humans are very good at hiding, Torres explained matter-of-factly. We evolved on a world full of predators much larger and stronger than us. Our survival depended on being invisible until we chose to act. We brought those same skills to space. The holographic display shifted again, this time showing hundreds of small objects positioned throughout hegemony space. They appeared to be simple asteroids or space debris, but the tactical analysis revealed something far more sinister. These surveillance platforms have been watching you for years, Torres continued. Each one is equipped with quantum communication arrays that can coordinate instantaneous strikes across vast distances, but that's not their primary function. Admiral Zektar's face had gone pale beneath his golden scales. What is their primary function? They are not just surveillance platforms, Torres replied. They're weapons. Each one carries a single kinetic penetrator capable of planetary bombardment, moving at relativistic speeds. They can crack the crust of any world in your empire. The council chamber erupted in panicked voices. The idea that human weapons were already positioned throughout their territory, capable of destroying entire planets, was beyond their worst nightmares. You threatened genocide, Chancellor Grixmoth accused. No, Torres replied firmly. We threaten consequences. There's a difference. Humans don't want to destroy your empire or conquer your territory. We want to be left alone to develop in peace. But if you force us to defend ourselves, we will do whatever is necessary to ensure our species' survival. He gestured again, and the display changed to show Earth's solar system. Multiple massive construction projects were visible, including what appeared to be orbital fortresses and industrial facilities of enormous scale. This is what happens when humans are threatened, Torres explained. Every resource, every mind, every effort focused on a single goal. In 6 months since Ambassador Chen's murder, we've converted our entire civilization to military production. Our industrial capacity has increased by 800%. Admiral Zektar studied the displays with growing horror. Your entire species mobilized for war? When humans are pushed, we don't negotiate or compromise, Torres said. We adapt, we innovate, and we overcome. Your Fourth Fleet learned that lesson. The question now is whether your empire will learn it without requiring further demonstration. Chancellor Grixmoth looked around the chamber at his fellow council members. He could see fear in their faces, the growing realization that they had awakened something they didn't understand and couldn't control. "What are your terms?" he asked. "Simple. Formal recognition of human territory and sovereignty, non-aggression pacts between our species, and most importantly, the establishment of actual diplomatic protocols. When humanity sends an ambassador, that individual will be treated with the respect accorded to any diplomatic representative." "And if we refuse?" Torres's expression didn't change, but his next words carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Then within 72 hours, every military installation in your empire will be destroyed. Your communication networks will go silent. Your supply lines will be severed. Your civilization will collapse not through conquest, but through the systematic elimination of everything that holds it together." The silence in the chamber was deafening. Every being present understood they were witnessing a fundamental shift in galactic power dynamics. The species they had dismissed as primitive newcomers had revealed capabilities that made traditional military thinking obsolete. "This is how humans wage war," Torres continued. "We don't invade and occupy. We don't rule through force. We simply ensure that any species that threatens us ceases to exist as a functioning civilization. Clean, efficient, and final." Chancellor Grixmoth thought about the thousands of worlds under hegemony control, the billions of citizens who depended on their government's protection. Against conventional enemies, the hegemony's military might was unquestionable. Against an enemy that could strike anywhere without warning, that same military became a liability. "I will recommend acceptance of your terms to the full council," he said finally. Torres nodded approvingly. "A wise decision. But understand this, Chancellor. Humanity keeps its word. We will honor any agreement we make. But we also remember every betrayal, every broken promise. Ambassador Chen came to you seeking friendship. You chose to murder her instead. We won't make that mistake again." He turned to leave, then paused at the chamber's entrance. "One final point. The weapons platforms positioned throughout your space will remain active, not as a threat but as insurance. As long as the hegemony respects human sovereignty, they'll remain dormant. But if any hegemony vessel enters human space with hostile intent, or if any human citizen is harmed by your people, those platforms will activate automatically." The implications were clear. Humanity had effectively held the entire hegemony empire hostage with weapons they couldn't detect until it was too late to stop them. After Torres and his escort departed, the council chamber remained silent for long minutes. Finally, Admiral Zektar spoke in a voice heavy with defeat. "How did we miss this? How did we so completely misjudge their capabilities?" Chancellor Grixmoth looked at the empty center of the chamber where the human admiral had stood. "We judged them by our own standards. We assumed they would think and act like us. We never considered that they might be something entirely different. Within days, the hegemony formally recognized human sovereignty and established diplomatic relations. Trade agreements followed, with the hegemony offering advanced technology in exchange for human innovations in stealth and surveillance systems. Other species throughout the galaxy took notice of humanity's bloodless victory over the region's dominant power. Requests for diplomatic contact began arriving at Earth from dozens of different civilizations, all eager to establish friendly relations with the species that had redefined military strategy. Ambassador Sarah Chen's sacrifice had not been in vain. Through her death, humanity had established itself not as conquerors or overlords, but as a species too dangerous to threaten and too valuable to ignore. Her name was honored throughout human space, and her final words became humanity's unofficial motto: "History will judge which of our species chose the wiser path." The galaxy had learned that wisdom, when dealing with humans, meant respecting their desire for peace, while never forgetting their capacity for war. It was a lesson that echoed across the stars, ensuring that no other species would make the hegemony's mistake of confusing human diplomacy with human weakness. In the end, Ambassador Chen had achieved what she had always believed possible, a galaxy where humans could coexist peacefully with other species. She had simply done it in a way that no diplomat in history had ever imagined.